Hellboy is a fictional character, a superhero created by writer-artist Mike Mignola. The character first appeared in San Diego Comic-Con Comics No. 2, and has since appeared in various eponymous miniseries, one-shots and intercompany crossovers. The character has been adapted into 2 live-action feature films in 2004 and 2008 that starred Ron Perlman in the title role, and 2 straight-to-DVD animated films, as well as 2 video games, Asylum Seeker and The Science of Evil. A well-meaning demon whose true name is Anung Un Rama, Hellboy was summoned from hell to earth as an infant demon on December 23, 1944 by Nazi occultists. He was discovered by the Allied forces. Amongst them, Professor Trevor Bruttenholm, who formed the United States Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense. In time, Hellboy grew to be a large, red-skinned man with a tail, horns, cloven hooves for feet, and an oversized right hand made of stone. He has been described as smelling of dry roasted peanuts. Although a bit gruff, he shows none of the malevolence thought to be intrinsic to demons, and has a strong sense of humor. This is said to be because of his upbringing under Professor Bruttenholm, who raised him as a normal boy. Hellboy works for the BPRD, an international non-governmental agency, and himself against dark forces including Nazis and Baba Yaga, in a series of tales that have their roots in folklore, pulp magazines, vintage adventure, Lovecraft and horror fiction. In earlier stories, he is identified as the world's greatest paranormal investigator. Fictional character biography: Hellboy is a creature, summoned in the final months of World War II by Grigory Rasputin on Ptarmigan Island, off the coast of Scotland, having been commissioned by the Nazis to change the tide of war. As a direct result of this ritual, he appears on Earth in a fireball in a ruined church in East Bromwich, England, on December 23, 1944. Proving not to be a devil, in the traditional sense, but a devil-like creature with red skin, horns, a tail, and a disproportionately large right hand made of red stone, he is dubbed Hellboy by Professor Trevor Bruttenholm. Taken by the United States Armed Forces to an Air Force base in New Mexico, Hellboy is raised by the United States Army and by the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, a private organization dedicated to combating occult threats. However, it is not until he eats his first human meal that he is forever bound to the mortal world. As an adult, Hellboy becomes the primary agent for the BPRD, alongside other human and quasi-human agents that include Kate Corrigan, a professor of folklore at New York University. Abe Sapien, an amphibian humanoid. Liz Sherman, a young female pyrokinetic. Roger, an unusually large homunculus. Johann Kraus, the spirit of a German medium kept in a containment suit. And Captain Ben Damio, a special operations soldier that became an Omqua Jaguar. The latter 2 agents have not met Hellboy due to his resignation from the Bureau prior to their induction. During a visit to Bromwich Church, Hellboy learns he had been conceived 300 years ago by a witch, Sarah Hughes, and a demon prince of Sheol. At this time, Hellboy had not existed as a baby in the real world. The prince's favorite son was considered to be a power waiting to be born. Hellboy's mother also had children, a nun and a priest who would later haunt the church, dying in an attempt to stop the demon from claiming Hughes in her coffin. This origin indicates that Hellboy is, in fact, half human. A later, but possibly unreliable account gives the name of the demon as Azrael, and of the witch as Sarah Hughes. The spirit of Morgana Le Fay claims that Hughes was her descendant. If this is true, it means that Hellboy is the last living heir to Arthur Pendragon and the rightful King of England. Hellboy has since drawn the sword Excalibur, claiming his position, albeit without much conviction. Hellboy was granted honorary human status by the United Nations in 1952, and is known as the world's greatest paranormal investigator. As such, he interacts regularly with humans, primarily law enforcement officials, the military, and various scholars of the weird, most of whom are not presented as overtly reacting to his strange appearance. Much like other comic book superheroes such as Batman, Wolverine, Daredevil, and Spawn, Hellboy is constantly tormented by the knowledge of his past. In one issue, he says of his past, "I like not knowing. I've gotten by for 52 years without knowing. I sleep good not knowing. Powers and abilities. Hellboy possesses superhuman strength, endurance, a degree of resistance to injury, and a healing factor that allows him to heal quickly from injuries. He also has the innate ability to comprehend ancient and magical languages. The extent of his strength is unclear, but he has torn down a large tree and hurled it at an opponent and has lifted massive stones. He has also picked up and thrown opponents weighing at least 400 to 500 pounds. Hellboy has a high degree of resilience to injury. He can withstand powerful blows that would severely injure or kill a human. He survived being shot many times in the chest with a .42 machine gun before destroying it. He has survived being impaled through the chest with a sword, severe werewolf mauling, being beaten unconscious with heavy iron tongs, falling from extreme heights, being crushed by boulders, and more. In the film version it is stated that Hellboy is immune to all forms of fire and burns, including Liz Sherman's flames, and electrocution. Despite his ability to quickly recover from seemingly mortal wounds, he is far from invulnerable, and can be injured or bloodied by conventional weapons. It is revealed to Baba Yaga by the dead Russian nobility that Hellboy may not be slain even through supernatural means and that he appears to be as deathless as her warrior, Kosku the Deathless. Hellboy ages very differently from humans. In the story Pancakes he is 2 years old but appears to be somewhere between 6 and 10 human years old. In Nature of the Beast, set in 1954, the 10-year-old Hellboy appears fully grown. His rapid physical maturation is in contrast to his actual rate of aging however, which seems to be much slower than humans. Throughout the 60-year span of time depicted in the comics, he does not age beyond the plateau of physical maturity. This mystical aging process is similar to the other demons and supernatural beings that populate Hellboy's world. The lifespan of a demon or half-demon are left undefined within the comics, and seem to range from decades to many thousands of years. In addition to his natural physical abilities, Hellboy carries a variety of items in his utility belt and jacket that can be used against various supernatural forces. He has been known to carry holy relics, horseshoes, various herbs, and hand grenades. Though he commonly carries an oversized revolver, Hellboy freely admits to being a lousy shot and often fights hand-to-hand, preferring to use short-ranged physical weapons like swords, spears, and his massive stone fist over firearms. Hellboy's lack of formal combat training and education is compensated for by his decades of experience as a paranormal investigator, though encounters with unfamiliar threats have often forced him to resort to improvisation and using his wits. Right Hand of Doom, as revealed in the graphic novel collection Strange Places, Hellboy's right hand was formerly the right hand of Anum, one of the greater spirits that watched over the burgeoning earth, and the hand the spirit used to create the dragon Ogdru. With that same hand, he bound the dragon, but then his fellow spirits turned upon him for his deeds, and destroyed him utterly save for his right hand, which was kept and preserved by many races throughout history, including the first race of man. As the hand which created and bound the Ogdru, it is also the key which will loose and command them. In other words, it is a catalyst that will bring about Ragnarok. The comic books themselves never mention how the right hand of Doom would actually perform these tasks. It is only ever announced that this is the case and that someone or something intends to do it with or without Hellboy's consent. The film shows it working like a key, being turned twice in a special obelisk secured by Rasputin would release the Ogdru. It is made clear that it is not necessary for the arm to be attached to Hellboy to perform its duties. It has been suggested that if Hellboy dies while the hand is attached to him, it would become useless. He has therefore concluded that the only way to prevent its falling into the wrong hands is to keep and protect it. Concept and creation. Hellboy originated with a drawing Mike Mignola did at a convention of a demon with the name Hellboy written on his belt. The demon itself bears virtually no resemblance to Hellboy, and Mignola had no intention of doing anything serious with the concept, but later decided he liked the name. Later, Mignola became interested in doing a creator-owned comic, as he felt it made more sense to create his own characters for the stories he wanted to tell, rather than trying to shoehorn existing characters into these stories. Mignola elaborated, "The kinds of stories I wanted to do I had in mind before I created Hellboy. Unregistered trademark s not like I created Hellboy and said, hey, now what does this guy do? I knew the kinds of stories I wanted to do, but just needed a main guy." He initially created Hellboy as part of a team of 5, but scrapped this idea when he realized he couldn't think of any team names that he liked. Publication history. Before Hellboy was published independently at Dark Horse Comics, the concept was initially pitched to a board of directors for DC Comics, who loved it, but did not like the idea of it involving Hell. The early stories were conceived and drawn by Mignola with a script written by John Byrne, and some later stories have been crafted by creators other than Mignola, including Christopher Golden, Guy Davis, Ryan Sook, and Duncan Fegredo. The increasing commitments from the Hellboy franchise meant that the 2008 one-shot In the Chapel of Moloch was the first Hellboy comic Mignola had provided the script and art for since The Island in 2005. Issues. Hellboy has an internal numbering on the inside cover of its issues. Below are the stories listed by their internal numbering for the comics. Issues. Hellboy in Hell is an ongoing series with its own numbering. Trade paperbacks. All in continuity Hellboy comics are collected in trade paperbacks. Trade paperbacks. All Hellboy in Hell comics are collected in trade paperbacks. Library editions. These editions collect the stories in the size they're originally drawn. Other trade paperbacks. Hellboy, Weird Tales, Volume 1, a Euro cover by Mike Mignola. Collects Hellboy, Weird Tales No. 1-4. ISBN 978-56971-622-9. Hellboy, Weird Tales, Volume 2, a Euro cover by Mike Mignola. Collects Hellboy, Weird Tales No. 5-8. ISBN 978-56971-953-4. Hellboy Jr. a Euro written by Mike Mignola, Bill Ray, al. Collects Hellboy Jr. Halloween Special, Hellboy Jr. No. 1-2, plus original material. ISBN 978-56971-862-9. Ghost Hellboy Special, a Euro written by Mike Mignola. Collects Ghost Hellboy No. 1-2. ISBN 978-56971-273-3. Savage Dragon Hellboy, a Euro cover by Mike Mignola. Collects Savage Dragon No. 34-35. The Art of Hellboy, a Euro written by Mike Mignola. Dark Horse Books. ISBN 1-56971-910-1. Hellboy, The Companion, a Euro written by Steve Weiner, Jason Hall. Dark Horse Books. ISBN 978-59307-655-9. Hellboy, Masks and Monsters, a Euro written by Mike Mignola, James Robinson, Scott Benfield, Jason Rodriguez. Collects Batman Starman No. 1-2, Ghost Hellboy No. 1-2. Dark Horse Books. ISBN 1-59582-567-3. Notable appearances. Beyond the Hellboy comic and its associated spin-offs, Hellboy has made appearances in other publications. Great Salt Lake Comic Con pamphlet. The character name Hellboy was included in a drawing by Mike Mignola of a demon character in a black and white illustration, with the later recognized name appearing on the demon's belt buckle. This image, accompanied by a short biography of Mike Mignola and his latest creation, appeared in the pamphlet in 1991. It is the first published mention of the later recognized name. This image was reprinted in The Art of Hellboy. Dime Press. A prototype incarnation of Hellboy appeared on the cover of Dime Press No. 4, an obscure Italian fanzine, with Hellboy copyright Mignola 93 written at the bottom of the cover. The cover, illustrated by Mignola and by the Italian artist Nicola Mari, show Hellboy in the act of attacking a diabolic version of the Italian SF comic book character Nathan Never. Mary at the time was one of the artists that worked on Nathan Never, and the first 2 years of life of this comic were the main topic of the fanzine. With the exception of the cover, there is no other mention of Hellboy within the fanzine. The character shown was still in a draft stage, and although close to the final design of Hellboy, it had grey skin and an outfit not common to the character. San Diego Comic-Con Comics, Mike Mignola's Hellboy by Mike Mignola and John Byrne featured the character's first full appearance, and was a 4-page black-and-white story that had an approximately 1,500 book print run. It was published by Dark Horse Comics in San Diego Comic-Con Comics No. 2 for distribution at the San Diego Comic-Con Fan Convention held in San Diego, California. Hellboy travels to an American ghost town, where he encounters a mangy mud that transforms into Anubis, the ancient Egyptian god of mummification. The story was collected in the trade paperback Hellboy, Seed of Destruction. Next Men, Hellboy makes a guest appearance in John Byrne's Next Men No. 21. This is the first American appearance in a full-color cameo. Comics Buyer's Guide, Mike Mignola's Hellboy, World's Greatest Paranormal Investigator by Mike Mignola and John Byrne featured the character's next solo appearance. It was published by Dark Horse Comics in a special 4-page mini-comic for distribution in Comics Buyer's Guide 1070. In the story Hellboy battles with the disembodied head of Nazi scientist Hermann von Klimt and his puppet henchman Brutus the gorilla to rescue a captive girl from the doctor's transference of nutrient fluids process. The story was collected in the trade paperback Hellboy, Seed of Destruction. Celebrate Diversity. Hi, my name is Hellboy by Mike Mignola was a 1-page panel ad that related the character's fictional origins. It was published by Diamond Comic Distributors in catalog supplement Celebrate Diversity Collector's Edition. The ad was collected in the trade paperback The Art of Hellboy. In other media, film, Hellboy. Guillermo del Toro co-wrote and directed a Hellboy feature film in 2004, sharing the credit with the original screenwriter Peter Briggs following Writers Guild of America arbitration. Del Toro, a fan of Mike Mignola's work, had previously written the preface to Hellboy, Conquer a Worm. The film starred Ron Perlman as Hellboy, Selma Blair as Liz Sherman, Rupert Evans as FBI Special Agent John Myers, John Hurt as Professor Trevor Bruttenholm, Doug Jones as Abe Sapien, Carol Roden as Gregory Rasputin, and Jeffrey Tambor as FBI Senior Special Agent Tom Manning. The film depicts Hellboy as living at the BPRD with a dozen cats and limited access to the outside world, and considered an urban legend by the general populace. The film received generally positive reviews, and a fair performance at the box office. However, the film debuted in theaters while The Passion of the Christ was still playing, and, according to Del Toro's DVD commentary, some theaters would retitle the film on their signs, or outright refuse to play it to avoid running a devil movie against Passion. Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. A sequel, Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, was shot in Budapest by Guillermo del Toro and released in 2008, featuring the returning talents of Perlman and Blair. Jones also returned not only in the role as Abe Sapien, but in 2 other roles, The Angel of Death and The Chamberlain. Revolution Studios had planned on making the film, but the studio went out of business before filming. Universal Studios then picked it up. The plot is a shift to more folklore rather than action, with heavy European overtones. The character of Johann Kraus was added to the team, voiced by Seth MacFarlane. The character Roger the Homunculus was not, but he was written into the plot as a very prominent character in early drafts of the script. The character of Agent Myers from the first film does not return, his absence being explained by Liz remarking that Hellboy had him transferred to Antarctica out of jealousy. Hellboy also reveals himself to the outside world in this film, and Liz is revealed to be pregnant with his children, twins. On November 11, 2008, Hellboy 2, The Golden Army was released on DVD. Animation. On November 9, 2005, IDT Entertainment issued a press release announcing that the company had licensed the rights to develop animated content for television and home entertainment based on the Hellboy comic. Ron Perlman, Selma Blair, Doug Jones, and John Hurt have all voiced their respective characters. Actress Peri Gilpin joined the cast as Professor Kate Corrigan. The first two 75-minute animated movies, Sword of Storms and Blood and Iron, were aired on Cartoon Network before being released on DVD. The first one aired October 28, 2006, and the second aired March 17, 2007. Both stories have much more in common with the comic book Hellboy rather than the film. Abe Sapien is not psychic, for example, and the artwork and color palette is derived more closely to Mignola's original artwork. The DVD of Sword of Storms was released on February 6, 2007. It contains documentary material, commentary and a Hellboy comic, Phantom Limbs. Blood and Iron similarly contains a comic called The Yearning. After the initial release, some stores included exclusive giveaways with copies of the Hellboy animated, Blood and Iron DVD, Best Buy, a 7 inches Hellboy figure. Walmart, an 80-page digest titled The Judgment Bell. Transworld, a 64-page Hellboy digest. Infinity, a Lobster Johnson magnet. Circuit City, a Hellboy bust-up. A Hellboy 2-pack limited edition DVD set was released July 1, 2008, that contained both films and a 7-figure. A third animated Hellboy film, The Phantom Claw, has been put on hold. Tad Stones, director and writer of the direct-to-video movies, says the film will star Lobster Johnson and will have some familiar characters, but Abe and Liz will not be in the film. Novels and anthologies. Christopher Golden has written several novels about the character, the first two of which, The Lost Army and The Bones of Giants, are part of the official Hellboy story canon. The events of both these novels are listed in the comic's official timeline featured in Hellboy, the Companion. In particular, the golden-penned character of Anastasia Bransfield was also described in the Companion, despite having never actually appeared in a comic. Hellboy, The Lost Army, Hellboy, Odd Jobs, Hellboy, The Bones of Giants, Hellboy, Odder Jobs, Hellboy, On Earth as It Is in Hell, Hellboy, Unnatural Selection, Hellboy, The God Machine, Hellboy, The Dragon Pool, Hellboy, Emerald Hell, Hellboy, The All-Seeing Eye, Hellboy, Oddest Jobs, Hellboy, The Fire Wolves, Hellboy, The Ice Wolves, Video Games, a Hellboy video game called Hellboy, Dogs of the Night, Hellboy, Asylum Seeker was released for the PC and the PlayStation, by Cryo Interactive Dreamcatcher Interactive Incorporated. It has no relation to the movie series. On April 6, 2005, Hellboy movie director Guillermo del Toro announced on his official site that he had made a deal with developer Konami to create a new Hellboy video game based on the movie version of the character and his world, featuring new monsters, new villains, and a new storyline. Herman von Klimt and his War Ape Cryogaf No. 10 are slated to make appearances. On May 9, 2006, it was revealed that the Hellboy game would appear in the summer of 2007, on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and PlayStation Portable. The game was released in North America on June 24, 2008 with the name Hellboy, The Science of Evil. It is developed by Chrome Studios, and published by Konami Digital Entertainment, Incorporated. As well as single-player campaign where the player gets to play as Hellboy, the game also features co-op play, featuring the characters Abe Sapien, Liz Sherman, and Lobster Johnson. A Hellboy video game called Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, Tooth Fairy Terror was released for the iPhone by Tuesday Creative on January 14, 2009. Role-playing game, the Hellboy sourcebook and role-playing game, based on the GURPS role-playing games system, was published by Steve Jackson Games in August 2002. HeroClix, Hellboy is featured in WizKids Indie HeroClix line with several different booster packs. He also has his own HeroClix HorrorClix cross-line collector's set called Hellboy and the BPRD card game. Hellboy was also part of Upper Decks vs. System card game as the first non-Marvel Comics or DC Comics character. Appearances in popular culture. Hellboy appears as a borrowed character in author Kim Newman's unregistered trademark Anno Dracula series, specifically in the novella Andy Warhol's Dracula, where he joins the ranks of Blade, Shaft, Travis Bickle, The Punisher, Paul Kersey, Scooby-Doo, and Shaggy in hunting down Johnny Pop, a vampire drug dealer. Hellboy has made guest appearances in Eric Larson's long-running comic book series, The Savage Dragon. Hellboy makes a one-panel cameo appearance during a hallucination sequence in Frank Miller's Sin City, Hell and Back. Hellboy made a cameo as a trick-or-treater in the last page of the Sam and Max story Belly of the Beast. Hellboy also appears in an issue of Eric Powell's Eisner Award-winning series The Goon. Hellboy made a one-panel cameo appearance, along with several other borrowed characters, in the She-Side Blade crossover The Battle for Independence from Image Comics. Hellboy appeared in Madman Comics No. 5. Abe Sapien, a popular character from Hellboy, appears in John Byrne's Babe 2 No. 2. In Kevin Smith's film Dogma, one of the Stygian triplets is seen wearing a Hellboy t-shirt. In one of the ending themes for Sayonara, Zetsubou Sensei, the animation and graphic style is the same one used in the Hellboy comic books. A large poster of Hellboy appears in a comic shop in the 2010 movie Kick-Ass. Hellboy makes somewhat of a cameo in the 5th volume of Requiem Chevalier Vampire, as a number of servants bear a striking resemblance to him. Hellboy appeared in the Mad episode Garfield of Dreams / I Hate My Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles voiced by Fred Tatasciore, where he advertises his magical left hand of doom which can solve all lefty problems. An action figure heavily resembling Hellboy can be seen on the teenager's nightstand in the Justice League Unlimited episode, Wake the Dead. Yu-Gi-Oh! Creator Kazuki Takahashi and Mike Mignola swapped renditions of their respective characters, i.e. a Takahashi take on Hellboy and a Mignola take on Yuge Muto for a special issue of Shonen Jump. Awards: the miniseries Hellboy, Conqueror Worm won a 2002 Eisner Award for Best Limited Series, while The Art of Hellboy won an Eisner in 2004 for Best Comics-related book. Mignola won a 2000 Harvey Award for Best Artist, based on Hellboy, Box Full of Evil. Hellboy, Darkness Calls won a 2007 Eagle Award for Favorite Color Comic Book, a Euro-American. The character Hellboy was nominated for Favorite Comics Character at the 2004 and 2005 Eagle Awards. Other Eagle Award nominations include Favorite Comics Story published during 2007 for Hellboy, Darkness Calls, and Favorite Comics Hero. Acclaimed comics writer Alan Moore listed Hellboy on his recommendations page, particularly Wake the Devil, calling it the skillful cutting and the setting of this stone that we can see Mignola's sharp contemporary sensibilities at work. In March 2009, the Dark Horse Comics character, Hellboy, won 2 categories in the fan-voted Project Fanboy Awards for 2008, Best Indie Hero, and Best Indie Character. See also, The Amazing Screw-On Head, another comic book from Dark Horse written and drawn by Mike Mignola. References: Weiner, Steve. Victoria Blake, Jason Hall. Hellboy, The Companion. Dark Horse Comics. ISBN A978-1-59307-655-9. Masters, Phil. Jonathan Woodward. Hellboy Sourcebook and Role-Playing Game. Steve Jackson Games. ISBN A1-55634-654-9. Mignola on Hellboy's Extended Universe. Comic Book Resources. March 3, 2008. NYCC, Hellboy Dominates 2008, External links, Official website, Hellboy Zone. Dark Horse Comics. Hellboy at the Comic Book DB, Hellboy video game at the Konami website, Hellboy animated official website, Hellboy, Seeds of Destruction, Hellboy Slot, The Hellboy Archive,